All right. Well, good day to all those listening and watching out there in TV land. We have one of my favorite YouTube dynamic duos, the good folks from Casino Guitars, joining us today. One thing that I love about Casino Guitars, if you haven't watched their YouTube channel, which we will link in our description and show notes if you're curious, I think they have some of the coolest content that is discussion-based from the perspective of an independent dealership. And they specialize in high-end boutique stuff. They have a lot of beautiful custom shops from all different sorts of brands. They have beautiful amplifiers, Dumble-inspired, Two Rocks, all sorts of really nice stuff. So I'm really excited to talk to them today about not only the state of the industry and where they see things going from the perspective of a dealership, but also to understand how one might go about buying a guitar sight unseen. The style with which we purchase guitars for a lot of us now is that we are often buying guitars online that we've never played before. And having a company like Casino Guitars in your corner that can help you vet the right instrument for you and can go through several models because they have a great inventory of them and be able to help pick one out that's perfect for you. That's really something that's not capable in a larger big box store to even be able to do that. So maybe we can get some tips and tricks today from them around the best ways to go about buying, let's say, Strats, Tellys, Les Pauls. What are things that you should be looking for? What should you avoid? Things of that nature. So thank you so much, guys, for being here today. We welcome you to Chairmen of the Boards.
Ooh,
welcome,
Mason, Brian, Grant. Thanks for having us here. This is awesome. We're excited to talk. Maybe not educate, but talk.
Yes. We can talk. We can do that. Yeah,
we're good at talking.
So maybe let's start first with I think I would like to know, because you do a lot of videos, kind of on Guitar Center and sort of the things that are going on. You've done stuff about like the Sweetwater buyout. You definitely seem to have your collective fingers on the pulse of things that are kind of going on in the industry and sort of the moves that are being made. Based on that, where do you kind of see the state of the industry, let's say, going in the next, let's say, 5 years, 10 years and beyond, kind of based on the trends that you're seeing developing now?
Why would you start with such a scary, loaded question? It's been going like this, like a rocket ship, straight up, like ever since the plague, and then it's sort of leveled out, and then we're going to have some serious restructuring within the major big boxes. I think I was just at Guitar Center in Sam Ash. Was it yesterday? It was yesterday.
Yeah, it was
yesterday.
Yeah.
Or was it the day before? It was the day before, 2 days ago. And I had never been as depressed from the music industry as when I walked through those, because I saw like empty shelves, empty hooks. Where you used to go to look at all the pedals in Google and Goggle, they'd taken them all out, and it was just teaching studio rooms that were all empty. They sort of built this big black boxes there and looked like little Hellraiser torture chambers to me, which I'm a big fan of Hellraiser, so it's not an insult necessarily. I love Clive Barker and classic orioles. But no, we set the timer. It was 22 minutes before someone asked for to help me. I was a little bit shocked. And then, but just the empty rooms, like in each place, I was just kind of bummed out.
I mean, I think that's been going on, right? I told you not too long ago, I was visiting my in-laws and went to the Guitar Center there, and there was no one there. There were pallets just in the,
right.
It was just empty. And we don't want to dog on Guitar Center too much, but it is a good indicator.
I think see, that's the negative, but I think the positive is people are finding guitars elsewhere. A lot of it's online, and there's some great online shops, and most of it's coming from the independent sources.
Yeah,
from places like Wildwood, CME, Music Villa. I like to consider Casino Guitars and Peach Guitars, Andertons, like all these great indie shops that really push the online experience of getting the right guitar, having fun getting the right guitar, and making sure you're happy with the right guitar.
Right.
And whereas the whole idea of like Bed Bath & Beyond, Best Buy, GameStop, unfortunately, the big box guitar shops we have is becoming a thing of the past, perhaps.
Right.
So we're going to have a big restructuring of GC, I think, a big restructure. I hope Sammy was actually more impressive. I was sort of really much more that this time. And I love old Sammy Ash for some reason, because he's crazy. but I see that all having to restructure a bit, and then maybe go to less stores, a little nicer, and then they don't have to be in every market,
right?
But then the independent shops are really coming into their own, and I think the manufacturers have been trying to sell direct right now, and a lot of them are already having hard times with that. They're sort of faltering and stumbling as they go, and we can get into that further as much as you guys want to. But I see it. There's going to be a lot of shops that are going to go away. And then a lot of the strong ones are going to sort of grow and become these beacons of hope, and more indie shops will pop up.
My understanding.
You go, Mason.
No, please. I've
so
been hogging the mic.
Even hearing Mason like talk through this question that he just asked you guys. So, going through the kind of more independent stores, and me sitting here thinking, like, when was the last time I went into a music store to just look at a guitar and get someone's advice? And I don't trust the stores near me, which would be bigger stores. And I'm up in Canada, up in Vancouver. Like a lot of them are bigger stores. And so I don't go in there and get their advice, because usually they're selling, just generic off the wall guitars. I remember a previous experience. A guy picked up a $300 Squire, and he shredding like crazy. Great guitar player, but he was just trying to get me like, this guitar can make you shred really fast. Like, you should buy this one. And I'm just like, man, I don't.
That's a good pitch.
I don't necessarily go to some of these bigger box stores because there's a level of trust there. I would go there potentially because of the inventory that they can purchase. Right. I would go to a store like Casino if I wanted to actually go in and get someone's opinion, especially after checking out your guys' YouTube channel. It's like, wow, these guys handle everything from, maybe bottom of the range Squire all the way up to crazy custom shop. And so you have the hands-on experience that these other bigger stores couldn't get. And I guess I'm not in America, so I'm not dealing with Sam Ash, and I'm not dealing with some of these bigger stores directly. But I guess I'm just kind of curious, onto the next kind of area, what you guys would say. Let's say there's someone like myself. I've been playing guitar for a little while. I'm used to buying online from places like Casino all the way to Sweetwater, all the way to CME. I'm used to buying online. That's my current experience. What are some of the tips that you guys could give someone like me? I am now looking for that more, one-on-one experience. Like, I want to buy a guitar from Casino, but I can't go to Casino in person due to distance.
You could. We've had people drive here from Montreal to buy guitars before.
No way.
But I mean, like,
and they came during the power outage when we had like a terrorist attack on our power outages. I remember this, and they brought me a whole 2 boxes of maple syrup. But they drove and they got here the day after the power went out. We had no power for 5 days. And I was showing them guitars with my cell phone.
No generators. No, but
one of our friends. But no, like, to your question, like, I'll let Jonathan sort of answer the question. I'll jump in briefly. Like, we're not good business people in general. We're not good at, like, we have this sort of Miracle on 34th Street mentality. If we don't have the guitar, we're not going to try to sell you a guitar just because we have it. So we send people to lots of other shops. Like, if you're looking for this great Gibson that only Wildwood can get, we want you to go to Wildwood. Or if you want the CME run, go to CME. Right. If you want some awesome Gibson acoustic, I'm going to send you probably to Music Villa, because you can get a hands-on experience there in Montana, and it's Montana. But walk through like how we sort of help folks do this.
I mean, I spend a big chunk of my day sometimes on email, but a lot of times on the phone, where people just call, hey, we watched your video. And, sometimes it's on stuff that we don't even carry, but we just, because we talk about what we love and what we enjoy when we get on YouTube. Early on, we were like, hey, we're not just going to push crap that we have in the store. We're going to just talk about things that make us excited. So people call us all the time and ask, I mean, it'll be about used stuff, or it'll be about something, whatever. And we'll try to sort of give them the best advice we can so they get the right thing. And then I'll have those same people email me, hey, I'm in Austin, or I'm in, Nebraska, but you guys are my local shop. What I mean? And there's these relationships that get built. And I think that's the way going forward, because I can remember being younger and like going to Guitar Center to try out lots of things just because it was all there, like inventory wise. Like, I didn't necessarily want those guys' opinions, but I wanted to put my hands on things. Right. And the more, I think YouTube has replaced that, because I don't ever think, man, let me drive to this shop where I can play all these things. I think, let me search a demo. You know what I mean? And then I
100%.
watch demos all night. And then, till 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm seeing what the latest reverb pedal thing I'm thinking about is doing.
Well, then Johnny and I both spend, like you said, a lot of time on the telephone. And that's something that sort of separates what we do. Like, let's say with the Fender Custom Shop, we sell a lot of Fender Custom Shops. Right. We build a lot. We build more than almost anybody as far as individual orders. But we spend, hours a day just talking to folks, walking through, neck carves, pickup winds, body woods, how you want it joined to the body. Right. And just every little detail, from the last thing we talk about is the color of the guitar. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty amazing and fun process. And we hear from other folks that find us, even though they have a great local shop, they didn't get that same experience, because you're dropping a lot of dime.
If you're buying a custom shop, you're spending, $4,000, $5,000,
$250.
At least $250. I mean, people always say, like, we can't go play a 59C neck carve, but you guys have played one. Like, what do you think? And I mean, there's times where we're in there with the phone down, like playing random things, trying to remember, hey, is this guitar, does it ring?
I hate asking personal questions. I will when I'm talking to a gentleman. It's always a gentleman. I think I've sold one female custom shop guitar out of like thousands. It's really
all different.
It makes me upset. Come on. Yeah. But no, it's I'll have to ask, like when we're getting the neck carves, like, I will ask, like, how tall are you? How big are your hands? Sometimes, like, if they never experienced it, just because you might read on this form, like, I want a 1056V or I want a 52U. And then
right.
Like, well, do you play with your thumb? You would wrap around the frets at all? Do you like, what is your size of your hand in proportion to what you like to hold in your, that sounds weird and sexual all of a sudden, so I'm gonna stop.
One thing, there are a lot of innuendos that come up in the guitar industry. I have to say, it's like you just can't avoid it. But one thing I did want to ask with that, something that makes me uncomfortable in the context of a pedal board setup, and it sounds like from what you guys are saying now that you get a similar thing, is when someone's coming in, they're ready to spend thousands of dollars on their rig or piece of gear, but they want your opinion, and they're asking you questions that, like, my opinion is going to be different than yours. Like, you play in an AC/DC cover band and I'm over here playing Brad Paisley covers, but you want me to tell you what pickup to get. Or like, how do you guys balance the fact that you have experience that others don't, but people want your opinion on things that, is personal. It's personal preference, something that you've developed since you were a kid playing. How do you navigate that?
Sometimes that's a nightmare, right? Because some people are dead set, I want what you love, and I always am saying, well, this is super subjective, but I like this, right? But and usually I ask, right, like, hey, are you out playing live? Are you like jamming at home? Because maybe it's not as big a deal if they're jamming at home, right? If they're just getting enjoyment, it's maybe a different ballgame.
Probably 90%.
That is probably 90% of our things, So, but we constantly try to, or I constantly, maybe your take on this is different. Try to push them. Well, I'll try to divert. Like, what are you doing? What do you like? What do you want to get? And then because I know in their brains, they want my opinion. I just try to imagine, okay, I'm playing a AC/DC tribute band. What would I want for that? And then I try to answer accordingly. I think that's the best we can do most of the time.
And you would say naturally a jazz master. You need a jazz master.
Absolutely.
Jazz master.
Jazz master, rolling jazz chorus.
I would do Jaguar.
Yeah.
Just as Angus used. Well, I don't know if you guys saw the Jimi Hendrix wireless that they had at NAMM 2 years ago, just like Jimmy used. So they said
that coiling wireless.
Really?
I'm not kidding. They really
straight to that.
There's a new Jimmy product like every few weeks.
Yeah.
So that estate is just grinding out new gear.
Yes, they are. Guys, I want to continue with this, but I wanted to break momentarily to talk about a few of the sponsors that make the show possible every single week. I want to pass it over to the great Grant Klassen to tell us about him.
Oh my, no pressure. So first sponsor I want to tell you guys about is the Guitar Sanctuary. Brian Omilion himself has been waiting there all day. They finally opened the doors for the podcast, and now he is there in the Guitar Sanctuary. I usually say a lot of the gear that we talk about today you can get at the Guitar Sanctuary, but today the focus is all about casino. So pedal wise, the Guitar Sanctuary is where it's at. Obviously, Brian does pedalboard setups, and he is the finest in the industry. So buy some pedals from the Guitar Sanctuary, get Brian to set it up on a rig for you, and then go to casino and pick up a guitar to plug into it. I mean, what better way is there to do it at the Guitar Sanctuary? So check them out, guitarsanctuary.com. And then I also wanted to tell you guys about monocreators.com. I have to be totally honest. I'm not sure if at the casino, if you guys carry mono soft bags or not, but they are.
But I use them and I love them. I've had a double mono bag forever that I've drug everywhere. It is amazing.
So like put a Telly, put a Les Paul in a dual gig bag, and it'll protect your gear and get you to where you need to be. Also their pedal boards, I'm a little bit of a fanboy of their pedal boards with all the room underneath, doing junction boxes and stuff with Goodwood. I need lots of room underneath a board to fit my stuff, and the mono angle board is where it's at. You can use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. I can still spell, and get 10% off your order at monocreators.com. And I think that's about it. So the Guitar Sanctuary and Mono, and let's get back to chatting to these wonderful gentlemen about
how do we get successful at Guitar Sanctuary so we can be sponsors of things?
That's a great question.
They must do really well.
I don't know.
Understand? I'd
like to go to Guitar Sanctuary.
Like Willy Wonka.
They're on my list of places
business,
to go.
Sprinkling goodness across the podcast universe.
One day.
Across the land of Texas.
Keep grinding. That's right.
So I wanted to bring us back to one thing that you had mentioned that I kind of resonated with, about kind of the idea of Guitar Center being a good barometer for kind of the direction of things as a potential place to kind of look for. The word on the street is, and I don't know if this is the word that you all have heard, is that they're trying to go more boutique and more specialty, and that they're considering consolidating to more major markets. So of course, keeping the flagship Hollywood store open, and the one in New York, and the ones in kind of really specific municipalities. I don't think that they're going to do Chicago, as my understanding is, because CME has that pretty well sewn up in the city of Chicago, but they were kind of going to be more boutique. They're trying to recruit more boutique brands to go in there. I think that, I can't remember what the guy's name is who is kind of running it, but it's like two names and it's kind of French sounding, like Jean-Claude.
Jacques?
No, it's a two-name one, like Jean-Pierre, Jean-Claude.
Marie Curie.
Yes. I believe it's Marie Curie.
That brand.
But I think that he's trying to figure out how to make it kind of more attractive in today's atmosphere. But I think one thing that's really interesting that you guys do, and others that you mentioned, Peach, Andertons, et cetera, is creating an identity of the ownership of the company in the way that you guys have done. I think is like such a smart move for any independent, because I think a lot of people want to connect with those that they're buying instruments from, especially, as you said, if they're dropping $5,000 or $6,000. And if they have a connection with you and you kind of become their sort of de facto teacher of, what guitars to buy, what you consider to be a good guitar, how you evaluate instruments, and that resonates with them, it's like you have a customer for life, whether they're based in the North Carolina area, they're based in Montana, they're based in California, because they know that you embody kind of the spirit of what they're looking for in a guitar. And I think that's like, it's something that a Guitar Center could never really do. They could never have an identity of the owner. Mr. Center would never be able to do
he's a nice guy.
John J. Center, the founder of Guitar Center.
I think you're giving us more credit than we deserve, because we're not smart business people. We started doing the channel really just to like sort of try to invite people into like the guitar shop, and just in general, it's like, because people stopped going to guitar shops, it seemed.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like we wanted to have this like ability where we don't talk about product. in selling guitars on our channel. We talk about just what you would talk about if you went to a guitar store back in the old days.
Yeah, it's like the barbershop version of guitar shop, right? Like, we see that outside. Like, we got a couch out in the main area. People sit around and they get into these strange conversations.
Yeah.
And that's, we sort of want that, right? We want to be like this community.
Yeah, we designed the shop around like, much more of a, not just like lots of slat wall with guitars. It's an old casino built in 1912. There's couches, leather couches, seats, and you hang out, you talk. People drink after work. I had people show up at, it was 8, 9 o'clock last night, just having a glass of wine. It was funny.
Yeah.
But then we just wanted to do that on YouTube. And then when the pandemic and everything hit, we just, people were lonely. And so we kept doing it. We got so bored at one point. When Taylor came out with the new guitar cases, we were putting Taylor guitars in and throwing it off the roof to see if we could break guitars. We put that on YouTube. Because it was like, what are we going to do now? There's no one to talk to anymore. And then it just but we sort of kept it as our principle. It's just like, do things that we enjoy.
Yeah.
We only carry guitars that we love. We only carry pedals that we really enjoy and love. And just talk about things we love. And it did resonate somehow. And then what you were saying, Mason, earlier, hopefully it has translated into building a solid sort of customer base,
right?
Across the interwebs.
So,
and friends, we've had friends we've met.
I'm sure. I mean, I
that we
think
vacation with. It's really awkward. When we go to NAMM, we get a room with like bunk beds, and we had one of our guys. He was just a customer at first. Now he's become one of our best friends. Like, we're like, hey, you want to stay in bunk beds with us? He's like, yeah.
I mean, who would say no to that? Honestly,
Yeah.
You've never met this guy. He could have been a serial killer. We're big aggressive spooners. I lost my earplug.
Don't kill the earpods.
Roll back in.
As long as they know, that you sleep commando and they're cool with that, God bless. That's what I say.
What happens at NAMM stays
Is
at NAMM.
Commando naked, or is that he was naked, right?
I think he's in fatigues. That's what I was thinking.
I just did fatigues. Yeah, full fatigues and a rucksack.
Like Sergeant.
Only fatigues.
Sergeant Slaughter with the kung fu grip.
That's right.
Aggressive forker.
I always wondered how Sergeant Slaughter slept with his hat on. That's always it never came off any of the GI Joes that I had.
Think about Cobra Commander. He's got that poor mask on all the time. I guess he had the little sheet. If you collected enough cereal boxes, you get the one with the hood on, which is also problematic by today's standards.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
So given that you guys are one of the kind of foremost dealers in where it comes to custom shops, I think this might be a good place for us to get into, maybe starting with just Fenders, looking at what are things that you would say to sort of the general population. I understand that, as we talked about earlier, giving people advice can be difficult. It can be like, well, I wear a size 12. That might not be your shoe size, sort of thing. And so we have to sort of be aware of that. But speaking in generalities, if we're looking for a guitar as a customer, let's say a custom shop, for example, or we're going to spec one out, what are sort of things that we could be looking for as customers to know that, like, this is probably going to be a fairly decent instrument for me? Are there sort of generalities that you could kind of go over? Let's just start with maybe the Strat that we should be looking for as prospective buyers.
You mind if I jump in for a second? I'm going to hand it all to you in a second.
Do it.
I'd say don't get too creative until it's time to get creative.
That's what I was going to say.
They've been doing this since 1954. They kind of have the blueprint for the Strat pretty nailed down. But you're looking for something that you want that fits you, maybe not just a custom color, but you want a different neck carve. You want rolled fretboard edges. You want certain frets, and then you do want a color, but like look at the blueprint of what's there already, and then let's start tweaking that slowly. Unless you have some crazy idea of like a super Strat that you're going to add a B bender into, we can do that. We've done all sorts of crazy things like that. It's not off the thing. I got one guy. Dude, it's happened. There's been, I've got. Oh man, we've seen some. I got one that I can't wait to see. We're modeling it after. This is when you go a little wild. It's after his grandfather's John Deere tractor. I was like, awesome. We got this cool John Deere green, but he's like, no, I want every metal to be a different metal and every color to be a different color because my tractor's falling apart. I'm like, all right, let's get this done. So it's going to be crazy. That's when you go kind of wild, or you can have like I had one guy do like the Bible verses inlaid on his neck,
right?
And you can go crazy, but again, that's when you start getting wild. Let's start at the beginning. Start at 1954. classic, ash body, a two-tone sunburst, and just a big neck. Now let's start changing and shrinking things. Let's find out what kind of sounds you like to make. Are you a David Gilmour guy? Are you an Eric Clapton guy? Are you, a Stevie Ray Vaughan guy? Are you your own guy? Are you a Radiohead guy?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can sort of start. The pickups are where you can have a lot of fun.
Yeah,
because I tend to do lots of mixed, staggered pickups when I design guitars with folks. Where I, let's say you like Hendrix a lot, you want that hand wound 69 in the neck, but you might not want that bright, harsh 69 in the bridge. So we're going to find something from the late 50s, maybe, and then maybe something from the mid 60s in the middle. And we have it wired with, a little bit different magic down in the sauce to smooth it out if you use a lot of pedals.
Mm.
That's the starting blocks.
I think this is really interesting, even just hearing you talk, because I'm definitely more of a pedalboard kind of guy. So when I play a guitar that I like, I know it, but I couldn't necessarily just say, hey, I want, this neck from this year, these pickups from these. Like, I couldn't do that. I'd absolutely be relying on you guys.
It's overwhelming. It is.
Well, it is. Even hearing you guys talk, it's like, oh man, there's so many details to consider. Where I'm just used to, picking it up off the wall or finding one on a used marketplace and playing like, yep, that's the one.
And jumping back, that is not a horrible way to do it, though.
Well, sometimes that is the advice to people. Hey, man, if you can go find one that's built, because sometimes all the things you want on paper are not really what you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you think all these things work together, and it's not always.
I can guarantee my wife would not have picked out me.
Right.
Like on a dating app, if she designed the Superman, it would not be like a hairy-looking Gumby that likes, Mr. Bean too
rare
much,
guitars
and stuffed animals.
See,
and I have a guitar problem.
So I'm in Grant's boat too. I'm the same way. I don't know all these specs. Like the guys have friends are talking compound radius and all these things, and I'm like, I don't know what those things are. Like. I think I was looking for a Strat, and I had like, well, how do you want this? How do you want? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, can I just pick something up? And I was like, I don't want it to be a baseball neck. I know that term and everything. So yeah, I'm in the same boat as Grant on that kind of stuff. Is
but
like
that's the trick, though. You might actually want it to be a baseball neck until because you haven't played one sometimes,
right?
Yeah, and that's the trick. So like we do like that's why the guys from Montreal that drove down, like they knew what they wanted, but and they were awesome. They're so good at guitar. It sort of made me mad. They're like Django Reinhardt players. I was like, God, go back to Canada, you bastards. But no, you sometimes like I didn't know I loved big chunky necks until I played.
Well, and I have this custom shop Strat at a Telly. And neither are what I would have spec'd out if I was speccing them. But I found them. They were already built. You know what I mean? And then when I played them, I was like, holy, I have to have this. You know what I mean? Like, this is the one, right? So there's some magic in that sometimes.
The journey can be both ways.
You never know.
That's and I love speccing guitars out more than anything. That's our favorite part of our job is
well, and some people call them, they don't know, and they think they got to have like every weird add-on and bell and whistle. And we just have to say, hey, you probably don't want that. Like, there's no unless there's a good reason, you probably don't need this weird extra thing,
And I think that's one of the things I got from watching your channel and spending time on your guys' channel is if you guys are lying, you're really good at it, but it genuinely seems like you guys want people to love their guitar more than you want to make the extra $500,000 on upselling them, and I love that. And you guys, do a really good job.
We're bad business people,
but you do a great job informing the viewer and informing your customer on like, you could get this, but it'll probably be a waste of money, and I don't think you'll be as happy. Which definitely correlates to pedal boards, choosing pedals, all that. And I think it's just human nature. But have you guys ever had
a budget?
Yeah. Have you guys ever had it where someone specs out a custom shop guitar, which, as a side note for later in the episode, was less expensive than I thought watching your guys' show on it. But have you ever had someone spend all this time, all this money on a custom shop guitar, and it just wasn't what they had dreamed about? And like, how do you avoid that? What do you do if someone isn't quite happy? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that question, but I'm just going to leave it.
No, you can.
Of course.
I don't think we've ever had that happen with the custom build, honestly.
I have had some that I was like biting my fingernails, like anxiety ridden to ship it to them. Like, oh my God, are they going to hate this? And then every one of those, I'll get an email, man, this thing it's magnificent. Thank you so much. And I just like,
We take it very personally. Yeah. I know it's weird, and it's just like, we get a lot of guitars in every day. Like they just shipped 3 or 4 more guitars. I just got a notification as we're talking right now from the customer shop.
That are customers
that just finished, and they're on their way. But we take it very personally. Like I was saying, the budget matters. Like even if you're not watching the budget, we're watching it, because there's certain things we're going to cut to get you there. And in the pedal world in particular, I think there's a lot of customers that are buyers and traders.
Yeah.
So some people, and that's not when you're going to spec yourself. Usually when you spec one yourself, that's going to be your keeper. Right. And we haven't had one that's been a dud yet. Knock on wood. But people buy guitars a lot, and then I'll see it on Facebook Marketplace a week later. Like, oh, that's weird. Or
they come back.
They come back and they want to sell it back or trade it. Like, it's just part of the game, and it's fun, because some people, the hunt is the joy.
Yeah,
that's the thrill. Yeah,
it's an expensive.
I get that though. I mean, I get Baxter's not like a trader flipper at all.
No,
like
I buy.
If he buys it, it's there. It's here.
I do that with my women.
He's a custodian.
Had like 35 wives at this point, so it's
me though. I have been a flipper, a serial flipper.
Yeah.
So.
See, what's great? I was gonna say, as I have to like agree with you. I hear it all the time. The hunt is like the chase of finding that gear is sometimes the best part of it. There's been plenty of stuff that I've been like I'm a huge Gretsch fan. I know we talked about my hair earlier, and we know that and everything, but like,
dude, I nailed it. He is a Brian Setzer diehard. You got Brian Setzer sheets in your bed, bro.
I did. My wallet. I brought it.
Stray Cats, not Brian Setzer. It's got to be the whole group.
Oh, what Brian? No, we love Brian Setzer. He's great. Yeah. He's amazing. His wife sings backup for him. It's amazing. Go.
That's awesome. Well, what I mean is, like, I was on the hunt for like a penguin for forever. Looking on Facebook Marketplace, looking here on eBay, on Reverb, on Sweetwater, like all these places. I finally got one, and I was like, what do I do now? Like, the whole hype of it was over. Like, I was just like,
yeah,
I got
play
it.
This thing. What?
Like I get to play it now, and then I'm just kind of like,
yeah.
Do I try for another?
You already arrived at Tone Town. Now what do you do?
Like, what do I do? So like, that's the one thing I was gonna comment is cool about like shops like you guys and these shops that like aren't big box like Guitar Center, where like you get to, like even the guys out front, they get excited to spec out stuff with people. And as board builders, I love building rigs and getting like shipping off a board that I've spent hours upon hours into specking out a guitar for hours and hours and ordering every detail, and then like setting it off, and I don't hear from them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do they like it? Do they hate it? Do they this? Do they that? And then like sometimes they'll email me 6 months later, hey man, I forgot to tell you I love it. I'm like, okay, good. Like, I just like, I was like, we just figured you didn't care. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, just like this kind of stuff is so fun to us. It's fun to hear back from people. It's fun specking out. It's kind of like your baby, like, you treat it as if it's your own gear, and you're going through everything. So I think that's the cool thing about not smaller shops, but customized shops is, you have more of a relationship, where the bigger box, when I first started, because I'm originally from Michigan, so like we had Guitar Centers everywhere. And you go in there, and it was just like, hi, welcome in. And then you would pick up a guitar, because that's what you could do then. And you could pick stuff up, and it was just like,
haunted.
Tell me about this guitar. It has 6 strings. It sounds really good. You can plug it into an amp. And I'm like, okay, well, how about, like, they never were convincing because they didn't care. But like you guys, the guys here, they're like, man, that might not be the right fit. Like, it's more personalized, which I think is super cool, and there's more like heart into it. So I wanted to comment on that earlier about it, which is so cool.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we love that. That is our problem. Speaking of penguins, we have some very limited edition ones that just shipped from Fender. I got the notification on that this morning too.
So maybe we'll get into.
I'll just say they're black and gold Paisley.
Oh, black and gold Paisley.
I'm just gonna have to not look.
Yeah, dude. I was like,
I want one so bad.
I was able to get 2 of them, like, because it's super limited. It's like the John 5 when they released that. We can only get one. And then we were able to get 2 of these. I'm super excited to see it. I saw one in person, the prototype.
Yeah, which was crazy. We did a Christmas wish list, and we were talking about our favorites, and I had said I've been looking for a black and gold penguin for years, and they were expensive. I think I called to have one, like just like the black. I've always just liked it, and then like the very next day, I bought a white and gold penguin. Like the very next day, and we talked about it on the show and stuff. And like, it looks like you got your Christmas gift. I'm like, yeah, it's like Christmas and birthday and Father's Day and
for the
every
next 10 years.
pretty much you can think about. But yeah,
we have problems here too. We don't stop. Well, I mean, I'm even on the list for the King of Tone pedal just to be on the list because I want to have something to wait for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
a long list.
That's a good point.
It's a long list.
Like 3 years.
I don't play
isn't
pedals.
It?
Yeah.
That's the funny part. I'm like a straight amp guy, like in general. Like I just amp to cable, and guitar.
I'm guessing Mason triple rack.
I play lots of vintage Fenders.
I'd be so happy.
And two rocks.
You're not a dual rectum fryer guy?
No.
Offensive.
No, not at all. That's too many knobs and things. I hate all that stuff. My pedal board, like where? Oh, here, I'll show you my pedal board. Hold up.
There we go. You mean amp foot switch?
I'm apologizing in advance.
I just plugged in. There we go. You see this?
So is it like a Boss foot switch or something like that?
No, hold on.
It has a wired cable to it.
See it.
Yeah, this
it's old school,
vintage.
Oh,
I'll come in closer.
I don't even know what it is.
I've never even heard that.
Nice. It's like a multi-effect, like an analog.
There's a good reason.
It's got a tube in it. It's got a 12AX7 because it's a tube-driven pedal board, gentlemen.
Nice.
Just what everyone wants.
And I have all my old vintage tube screamers, and people just come and make fun of me. I have a sitar pedal, and that's about it.
Beautiful.
This is true. All true things.
What more do you need?
I need therapy.
Well, let's break for a second to talk about some more sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week. The first of which are friends over at Sweetwater and their brand new program, the Gear Exchange, which is essentially all of the best things that you love about sites like Reverb and eBay, but has more of a peer-to-peer element like you would find, say, on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And what they allow you to do as a seller, which is something that none of the other platforms allow, if you decide to keep all of your earnings for selling your used gear on the Gear Exchange, and you put it into a Sweetwater gift card, you don't have to pay any seller's fees. So it's an easy way to, right off the bat, keep another 8 to 10% in your pocket, so long as you're buying stuff on Sweetwater, as I am very often, whether it's pro audio gear, whether it's other guitar gear. It's a great way to maximize your profits if you're wheeling and dealing and selling used. Highly recommend checking out Sweetwater Gear Exchange at sweetwater.com/used. Set up an account for free and get buying and get selling your used gear. Secondly, I want to talk about Neural DSP. Now, they have the great product that many of us use, the Quad Cortex. However, their plugins are also amazing, and it is just a matter of time before the plugins are available to be used inside of the Quad Cortex. And they have all the classic amps, whether you're talking about Soldano SLOs, Mark II C pluses, Tone Kings, Friedmans, they're all available through there. And you definitely want to check out all of their different plugin options. We got a video coming soon with Ryan Morgan from Neural DSP where we go through and he tries to convince me to convert to the dark side and go away from all my tube amps. We profile some tube amps. We profile my Klon. So a lot of cool things coming up. Head over to neuraldsp.com and use the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRME, and get 30% off any plugin of your choosing. It only applies to plugins that have been out for more than 90 days. So any of the brand new ones, it's not eligible for. But as soon as those exceed 90 days, then the coupon code will be eligible for those. So pretty much 99% of every plugin they have is available for that coupon code. But any of the new stuff, like the Tom Morello one, I think maybe has a couple more weeks before that one is eligible. So head over to neuraldsp.com. All right, back to casino guitars. So one question I had, and this is always something that is interesting, I want to move into Gretsch's too for Brian's sake, but if I were going to buy a Strat off the shelf, would there be certain things that you would say as a customer that I should look for in terms of like weight, wood, neck profile, frets, radius? Are there sort of like baseline things that like a good guitar will likely check these boxes? And let's just keep it on Strat for now.
And it's so hard, right? Because, and I know you guys all know this, everyone is different, right? Like every time I say, man, don't ever buy a guitar that does X thing, I find one that does X thing and it's amazing. And then I want it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it is hard to just have a baseline. You got to be under this weight, or you got to have this radius,
on the weight thing in particular, some of the rock star folks that we've gotten to work with, they prefer a heavy guitar.
Which is
and
weird.
So in this, so we've talked about like the whole light guitar thing has become like sort of a phenomenon that's fairly recent. It's not something that's been throughout history. It's all the great guitars from the 70s and 60s were pretty heavy. So it's a rare thing, not Strats, but I'm thinking Les Pauls for sure.
Yeah.
I hear that lovely baby.
And I mean, as far as if you're walking into a store to buy a Strat, I'd say first thing to have in your brain, like if we're talking like production stuff, do you want more of like a vintagey kind of vibe? Do you want modern? You know what I mean? I think most of the stuff Fender is making right now is pretty darn good, honestly.
And we still, like, if you're looking at Strat too, and you're in your budget world, we always say if you're in question, you're just jumping in classic vibe,
man. It's hard to beat.
One of the best guitars in the market, still is. They've gotten more expensive through the years. They're now what the Player Series used to be. They're around $430, I think, for a classic vibe. But
and that was a Squire.
They're one of the best classic vibe Squire. I think that's a great guitar. Into it.
There was a guy who came in the shop yesterday. And he was talking about buying a backup Strat. And he was talking about the Player Plus. And I was like, Player Plus is pretty cool. Got a lot of extra things. But you probably not the best value for what he was looking for. I was like, man, if it was me, I'd either buy a classic vibe or I'd just buy the regular Player Series. Especially like it's not your main guitar. I just didn't think he was getting that much value spending the extra money on a Player Plus for what he described. So, I mean, it's just things like that.
I mean, things I would check too, like when you come in, like I'd obviously make sure everything works. Like if I'm just walking into the shop, I'd like to make sure like the neck is set in there right.
Those are things that are probably more important now than they've ever been.
And that's usually something where it's you can tell just like if the strings look like they're off the board a bit. That's usually a neck adjustment. It's not. A lot of people think, oh, it's like the bridge is cut in here wrong. It's just routed wrong. It's a neck adjustment.
Got to smack
a proper shape. You're like breaking a cat's neck. He's got to get it done sometimes.
Just like everyone can relate to that, right? We've all done that.
I mean, if you've had a cat before, you've had that feeling. Sorry, cat. But that's how I've seen great luthiers when we're sitting there working these all gently. They just grab them. Like, oh Jesus!
It's like chiropractor for guitar.
Perfect. It's horrifying.
That's a great way to say it.
Or like Hellraiser and the Cenobites or whatever. Again, it's just a terrifying moment. But then they make it play beautifully. And I've seen it happen with boutique fancy guitars that are $6,000. The guys are, or just like you get a Squire and you're gently working them, bam, and it's right there. And so I check that and make sure everything's working.
I heard
frets, edges.
I don't know if this is a wives' tale or not. You guys could tell me maybe if this holds any weight. But a buddy of mine was telling me of someone he knew that walked into a guitar store. This was for acoustic, so slightly different, but the principle applies. Walked into a guitar store, all these beautiful acoustics on the wall, various price ranges, and he just went by and strummed each acoustic as it hung on the wall to listen to the resonance of the wood. And the point of the story being, if he liked how that test fared, everything else could be adjusted to suit his taste. Would you guys agree on that? The point of my question being, to get to it, I could have just said this at the beginning. How important is it to get a good setup done on a guitar before you fully judge if you're going to love that guitar or not? In my mind, it's a very, very important to get a setup to my taste, but maybe I'm kidding myself and I just need to learn how to play guitar better.
Okay. So I recently bought a Falcon, a Gretsch Players Edition Falcon, awesome. Midnight Sapphire. Waited for it forever. I was in lusts.
That was forever
with this, it took it was back ordered. It took forever to come in. But anyways, it finally did. I opened it. I saw it. I kind of did the thing you did. And it was not perfect, but I knew I could get it to where I wanted it to be. Right. And it took me probably a month of having that guitar to get it where I wanted it, staying in tune the way I felt right, to decide if I was going to stay with 11s or 10s. But there was a time in my playing life where I would have said, oh God, I made a horrible mistake.
Yep.
Send this guitar back. You know what I mean? But it's probably my favorite guitar to play right now. But I just had to know. Hey,
so to your point,
right.
yes. But then there's the flip side of like someone like me, who like I'll play anything. If it's got strings on it, they could be like,
you're the outlier though. You're the strange mutant outlier.
Intonation, that's a made up word in my opinion. I don't care.
Just bend the string a little bit.
Fine.
Push harder.
Yeah, you do. Just like that's what everybody did. I figured I didn't learn with like sheet music at first. I was just like, make this sound come out, and then but I do think we were working on a guitar in particular just the other day. It was a great custom shop Fender, and the customer brought it back in. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about trading this." I'm like, "Well, let me just do a setup on it." So we performed a setup, and so much of the setup is in the saddles. And a lot of people don't, not just the way it intonates or not just the way it sounds, it's the way it plays. It gives you this looseness. Like you can be playing 10s, and it can feel like you're playing 11s or 12s if the saddles are jacked. And it's not just up or down, it's just where it sits. And Sean, who works with us, has sort of I call him Sean Magic Fingers with the
for the guitar.
It has nothing to do with the guitar setup.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, totally different skill.
Are we talking about guitars?
So he's like Magic. He was on the road.
He's really pretty too. My mom thinks he looks like Sam from Outlander.
Oh
God!
So we're gonna have him dress up in a kilt.
So we're gonna keep him with your on.
Look who came in the shop today.
A heart attack. Look at that beautiful baby.
Hello.
How old's that critter?
If he can hear you,
Come in.
He might. He sometimes mutes.
That makes sense. That's really
got to mute it. Oakley can sometimes be noisy.
You made a cute critter though. That's surprising.
For someone that apparently looks like Ricky Lake, makes a great baby.
Hey. Oh God, that is just mean. Ricky Lake, that's Ricky the worst.
That is a pretty rough one.
And we've been called all sorts of things, most of it bad, but Ricky Lake takes the cake.
Ricky Lake's pretty rough.
I was hoping for a more, a more distinguished, daytime personality like Geraldo Rivera. I would have preferred Geraldo.
Oh, you do look like Geraldo hippie style.
I can see that.
God, no, you're Geraldo. And Jason Momoa had like a sex love, and then the baby just came out and it was you.
Geraldo and Jason Momoa.
They make it the sex.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
No, our best insult though was towards one of our guys that was on the channel. He was doing one of our coffee and cigarettes episodes. We were out front of the shop. It was about James, and somebody said it looks like a jar of mayonnaise in a baggy shirt.
Oh,
no.
we saved the insults. They're great. And then somebody else they said he looked like this was recently. They say he looked like this character from Star Trek. God, it was the guy with the mustache and is outwardly fabulously flamboyant and from the original Star Trek, and he gets the worst insults, which is fantastic.
It is interesting what people feel like they can what they can say online behind the comfort of their screen versus they could be the most polite person in real life talking to you face to face. Put it behind a screen, it's like, oh dear God.
How do you I honestly love everybody. I really do. I haven't met like an enemy. Somebody can hate me. I'm like, man, like I'll be friends with them by the end. And I'm just shocked at what people type on YouTube and on
100%.
Any type of changes. And I try to. And that's what my heroes are. I love Mr. Bean and I love Mr. Rogers. Like I do. That's like, and like I'm obsessed with it. And you know that because like whenever we do our stuff, I pick one person I'm talking to. And I'm sort of like, and that's how I imagine the camera is just a person I'm having a conversation with, and Jonathan happens to be here bothering me.
Let's say Mr. Bean, Bean comes into the shop tomorrow. What guitar do you grab off the wall to give him?
A Jaguar, because he's really tall. I want to see him play a short scale. It's a goofy guitar.
Make him look like a giant.
My God.
Like he's trying to like do all those switches, or like a GS Mini. And what's funny about Mr. Bean too, I know too much. His daughter is outrageously gorgeous, but at the same time looks just like Mr. Bean. But that's stupid.
It is very strange. I didn't believe this.
Look it up.
Showed me.
We need to see what AI predicts.
I know.
So there's something attractive in there. Then is what you're saying.
No, Mr. Bean is like, because I mean, he's one of the wealthiest guys in England too. Like people don't realize like the mass estate that he's built in, but the joy. It was the last movie I watched with my grandmother before she passed away. Not before like I got rid of her. That'd be weird. But it's returning your grandma. You're going back to Aldi's or whatever store we shop at today. I don't know.
You like Aldi? introduced my children to Mr. Bean. It was like some B movie or something.
It's amazing though, right?
It's pretty good.
Oh, come on, say it's amazing.
It was amazing. I don't know if they got it. I think they were just like, I think it stressed them out, the whole thing, honestly, but it's fine.
Well, Brian Setzer can't respect this because he's like, I'm too cool. My pompadour won't allow me to say I like Mr. Bean on live camera.
I'm a big fan. I like my favorite episode of like classic Mr. Bean is where he's like hosting like a dinner party and he doesn't have anything, and so he just cuts up onions and puts toothpicks in it. And it's just like raw like chunks of onion with toothpicks.
I think I've done this for real.
You probably have.
I mean, my kids, like, they wanted lunch the other day, and I found these old pieces of bread. They weren't moldy yet, but I was like, "Here you go, kids!" Or like if it's up to me, it's like Hot Pockets. Let's go, bam!
Oh,
who's gonna burn their tongue?
Pockets.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Hot Pockets.
Thank you. I forgot. I completely forgot about Hot Pockets.
It's the meal of fathers cooking.
I'm just like, get in the truck, kids. We're going to Biscuitville. Let's go.
It's expensive now.
It is. Well, kind of. My children are like, they just want like a cheese biscuit. They don't care. They
Not
don't
for
want
these guys. These are the riches. We're the poor.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So,
Well, I have another question. So we talked a little bit about strats. One thing that you said is that the weight thing, and this is mostly for selfish reasons, is a lot of times I will automatically just discount a guitar, especially a custom shop, if I see it's much over, let's say, 7 pounds, 10 ounces, kind of getting closer to 8, certainly over 8. But you're saying that is not necessarily a deal breaker. Like it could still be a great guitar that would outplay something that was 7. Because recently 100%. I almost bought a Stevie Ray Vaughan custom shop, because I guess they've released it now as a custom shop. That has it's not like an exact replica of his number 1, but it sort of looks like the American production line one, but it has some relicking and checking. And I found one that was 7 pounds, 1 ounce, which is pretty great for an Alder body.
That's really right, yeah.
It was awful. It was not like a great guitar.
Right.
And so it was a little bit disconcerting in that, like, man, it really checked the box weight-wise. I like the flatter 12-inch radius. I typically like the Texas Special pickups, but it wasn't like a great guitar. And I played another one that was 7 pounds, 10 ounces that had the roasted neck. It was like a 61 heavy relic. And that one was, again, 10 ounces heavier or 9 ounces heavier. And it was an amazing guitar.
Yeah.
Had the fat 60s pickup.
Something, yeah. It's not something that's been a thing until recently, until the last 10, 15 years.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say generally I do want lighter, and I do think they're more resonant, but
you're also
there's just
performer too.
Well, that is true, but there's just exceptions. I think I'm going to at the risk of sounding like an idiot and being esoteric. Sometimes we get guitars, man, and they come in and I know they've just been built and I don't love them, but then I love them after like a month. Sometimes I think a guitar has to be a guitar for a little while before it gets.
That is our flaw, because it's a tree learning how to be a guitar.
Right.
That's how we always talk about it. And it's just getting into this phase of its life. And I mean, that was a case with some of the big launches from Fender when they, production wise, they launched these guitars, had to get them out, and the wood wasn't done curing. The necks were still like leaking oil.
Right.
We're like, what's happening?
And they're not good, but
they're not good. Wait.
They hang out in the shop for a year.
It'll be great.
Sometimes they're good. I don't know if I'll say great every time, but
that's a nice pair of shorts. There you go, right in there.
What's one thing? This is something I actually had written down. I wanted to ask you guys. Let's take your typical customer, whoever that may be. It sounds like he's going to be male, maybe in his 30s. Who knows, 30s or 40s. What do you wish your typical customer, or someone that's going to come into your shop, understood more? Like, what do you wish they would come in like, I wish you just understood the importance of wood type. I wish you understood the importance of radius. Like, what's something that someone could take away from this and be like, I think one of the more important things I should probably learn about is this about a guitar.
I appreciate that question. I'm going to jump in that. I think I'm going to answer it sort of in sideways ways. I think when someone comes in and they've never done sport, the most important thing is that sense of joy of like, let it be fun. Let the process be fun. Don't look at it like math or science, because it's not. They're building, they're making a tree into a guitar and then putting some magnets into it that were designed in 1954. with some circuitry that was designed in 1948, and we're going to make something magical. You're going to make your soul maybe hopefully come through it, whatever your soul might want to transmit. But the joy, the discovery, and understand that there's so many parts that make this one thing great or makes this one thing not so great. So it's like, it's our jobs as stewards of that. And we take it very seriously to make this, even if you want something really badly, you're going to see us sort of push back against it if we think it's going to make a bad guitar. And we'll not do it if it's going to be something horrible. Yeah. So we've done that. And it's like, I think this is going to be a disaster. You're going to be very unhappy. You're going to spend $6,000. But no, I hope that helps a little bit. That's my thoughts.
So,
Jonathan?
okay, yeah. Sorry, I won't interrupt. Jonathan.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I think my biggest one, man, is I just wish people would be open-minded about it. Because sometimes people come in and they're so dogmatic about what it has to be, they shoot themselves in the foot. You know what I mean? They kind of hamstring themselves.
So keep like scalloped frets on the table. Keep the Floyd Rose on the table. Just see what happens.
Well, those are priorities, of course.
I am building a scallop fretboard. There's a master build we're getting built for he's a dear friend of mine. He's getting master build, and it's going to match his 1965 Shelby Mustang.
Oh, very cool.
And it's getting the Shelby plate from Shelby. Is making a plate for the guitar. It's going to be beautiful, but he's getting scallop fretboard. Oh, I'm so upset.
This is awesome. Just right there.
The guitar is. I've been in the car.
Close.
I've gotten to drive his car. It's the best thing since Hot Pockets. Is this car?
And Hot Pockets are good.
It is. Like I'd rather have this car Hot Pockets for the universe, obviously. But then the Scout Frepper's like, darn you.
Well, it sounds like tell him, just say, don't be a pervert, man. You gotta just get a ring.
He's a weirdo. He's an Ingve. He's an Ingve
like
diehard. He's like, this is Ingve Mustang guitar. I get it, man. Like he's a shredder. This guy, he's a lawyer. He does not look like a shredder, but he's got this hair metal album out. Like not hair metal. He's metal.
It's kind of fantastic.
It's really good. He comes in a suit. He looks like a normal dude, short haircut, little tie, little sweat on the armpits from like doing law or whatever they do. And then like he just shreds on guitar. And he makes
it's sort of it's strange. It's jarring.
Did you tell him from like a legal perspective, like the scallop fretboard? That's barely legal.
Barely.
That's an offense.
Open yourself up to all sorts of lawsuits.
God, that was like the whole VHS tape I was just flashing back to. You got me off channel there for a minute. I'm sorry.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, it's buying a good guitar is more about the art, the feel, the expression than it is about the science and the specs and like Jonathan, you were saying earlier, by keeping an open mind, there's been a ton of guitars that on paper you should hate, but in reality, you love them.
I love them. That's right.
No, like I didn't think like thin line tellies with P90s would be some of my favorite guitars, and I love them.
I would agree with that.
It's not something
I would shut down a thin line telly with P90, so I need to keep an open mind.
No,
but man, we've had a few that are stupid good. I mean, and awesome. I tell customers this all the time because then sometimes people really stress out about it, right? Like I can feel their anxiety over the phone. But if we're not going crazy, like if we're keeping it within like what we're talking about, don't try to reinvent the wheel, and redesign the Strat on your build. It's going to be a great guitar. Like the custom shop makes good guitars. You know what I mean? And most of these people, it's not like they've played 1,000 custom shops, right? So most of the time it is like their vision realized, they get it, and it's amazing. And it's just.
And the fun part to go really hog wild is when you enter, let's say you're in the Fender custom shop world and you enter the master build world. Yeah. That's when you have like one guy that you're going to be talking with on the phone and the internet. We're going to be talking with him a lot, and he's building your guitar from start to finish. If you want to go crazy, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Because you're going to be able to sort of guide it as it's going. So if something harebrained starts to happen, you can I don't know if I like that. He's like, cool, let's pivot it. And or you want to do like one of my dear friends is building a super Strat that I cannot wait to see. And I'm not a super Strat player, but it has the Floyd Rose. It's got the HSS build, and it's going to be hot, and it's going to be beautiful. And then we built a Jazz Master the other day. It was like a graffiti yellow over oxblood.
That was a killer. I mean,
one of the coolest guitars I've ever
sounds
seen.
horrible on paper, but man, it was cool looking.
I mean, who would design that? And this crazy guy, we're talking colors. Like, I like these colors. I'm like, well, let's do them together because I'm on this trip with you. I've been drinking. It's 10 a.m. Let's go. And he got it. And he loves it, and I loved it. We did a demo on it even after it was sold. Just we don't have time to do that usually. But I was like, I want to play this guitar because it's so pretty.
Right.
Sorry, getting excited about guitars.
I think anything with oxblood, I'm on board with.
Right. Yeah. And in Canada, they use real oxen too, which is kind of the cool thing.
It's controversial.
But before we go further on that, I actually want to jump into Gretches and maybe offsets, and just to appease Brian. But I want to do one more break for our final list of sponsors. So I want to turn it over to Brian to do that, and then we will lead into Gretches and offsets to finish up for today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So for our final two sponsors, the first one is going to be Bestronics, BTPA. They have anything and everything you need from cables, plugs, DC connectors. I mean, I think everything I order, their looms are absolutely incredible, and they're making all sorts of amazing touring equipment. Quad Cortex racks. I just happened to go to a concert this past week for a couple of my favorite bands where I got to see in person Brad with Bestronics handiwork on 3 redundant Quad Cortex setups and everything for this band, and it was quite fantastic. So, and they make amazing stuff. They put together some quality racks. So they have a great code, DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS. I'm going to say that again because I definitely said it wrong. DACHAIRS for 10% off of their site. Go check them out. Like I said, if you need, the most common question I get are these, where do you get those little 2.1 millimeter DC power plugs? It's crazy how it's the most common question. And I always say Bestronics. So go check them out and give Brad a shout and tell him that the chairman sent you. Final is going to be Stringjoy. If you're not local to a guitar shop that has strings, or you just need, strings in bulk, or you need what do we call it? The Netflix of strings, kind of. I guess
subscription service strings.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can have it to where they send you so many per month, or you can use the code and just get one set. It's BOARDS for 10% off, a single purchase, or get their subscription. Which is actually really cool and leads me into my question for you guys with Gretches is strings, because I own pretty much only Gretsch, and it's just been the guitar. Like, I've had some Strats, I've had some, I just I don't know why, I've just always liked them really well. And I'm curious for you guys with strings, do you find, like, the most common thing I hear is like Gretches and tuning, like staying in tune, that kind of stuff. So, like, when you guys get them in, do you have recommendations on, a higher gauge string for it to stay better in tune after setup? Because I've had people like, oh yeah, I put 9s on it and it sounded horrible. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, there's, with the Bigsby and everything. So I play 11s, but sometimes I fight the getting out of tune issue, even though I have a guy here that sets up the guitars and everything's done right. And I'm curious to hear from you guys on that.
I'll let Jonathan lead most of this, but our thing we do with Gretches, they do require setup.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, almost all of them, especially the pro ones, even the ones built in Japan, like they're
sometimes
coming across the ocean.
Yeah,
Electromatic Streamliners 100% need a setup, I think. But we put elixirs on all of our high-end guitars like that almost immediately.
Yeah,
we'll take the Fender strings off or whatever they're using and just throw some elixirs on there, and that. But then the setup, you go into that, you have your own Falcon that you play all the time.
I mean, like, I play 11s on the Falcon. I've had Gretches before that I've always had 10s on. I mean, I just am a huge believer that it is all about the nut. Like, every time I've ever had a tuning issue, Bigsby or not, it's the nut, right? So, like, same thing with this Falcon. I was having a hard time getting the G to stay in tune, even with 11s on there, and I thought about 10s, and I don't know, I feel like it lost something, but went back to 11s, filed the slot, screwed around with it till I got it, staying in tune. And then again, like maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after doing that, messing with that and just playing it, I feel like it stays. it's close to my Fenders as far as how well it stays in tune. And I play it live a lot, you know what I mean? So I'm playing it for 2 or 3 hours live, and I feel like I have really good tuning stability. I'm not constantly stressing about, oh my God, is my Falcon out of tune?
I once tried as an intellectual exercise to take the spring out of the Bigsby while the strings were still on the Bigsby. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, it was easier to buy an apartment in New York City. Then I was like, why am I doing this? And I wouldn't give it up. My wife was like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just got to figure this out. Why? Just because it's like getting to level 60 in Diablo. I know. It's like a great white shark is trying to.
There's an easy way to do it.
I don't want to know because I took.
All you got to do is like hit something, go to your little whammy bar thing, and then act like you're pulling back. And as soon as you hit the right spot, the spring goes flying.
I couldn't get it back in though.
No, you can't get it back in.
That's what I was trying to do.
No.
This was years ago. I remember that, like, just that thought. It was a nightmare. That's why I didn't like the Players Series Gretches at first, because I was like, it's not vintage, correct? It's got to be vintage. I was like, I'm a big, a
little strength of Big is the best.
But, oh my God, it's such a great invention. Such a great invention.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an opinion on nitro versus polyurethane? I have an interesting story for you regarding this. Well, one thing I'll say, and this video is not out yet, but
where's it at?
You sprayed your son in poly.
So I have this Clapton Strat from the 90s, and and it was originally polyurethane, and we had we'd been doing some videos.
90s comps.
Nice.
Oh,
We'd done a video where we had been using this for something else, and a hunk came off kind of the upper bout, and that finish was as thick as a MasterCard. It was so thick. And so I thought, man, this can't be good for the tone. So we recorded it thoroughly, recorded all the settings, and then I took it to a refinisher and he stripped it and refinished it in nitrocellulose. And we're about to re-record it, same settings, same amp, everything, and seeing if we can notice a difference. Already anecdotally, it is much more resonant and just feels a whole lot better, more inspiring as a player. I don't know whether that will translate through a microphone, but it's an interesting thing. Most of my guitars are nitrocellulose. I have a few, I have a Tom Anderson that's like a Super Strat that's certainly poly, and I think that's all he shoots in, is my understanding. But I'm curious if you guys, what your take is on nitrocellulose versus polyurethane, and sort of the pros and cons, or what you recommend.
I think 100% nitro. In my experience with playing guitars, I played everything, and I love the experiment you're doing with that. I think, what you said, the feel of it's a huge difference. The weight of it's different. I think sonically it resonates more as a piece of wood, even when I'm not plugged in. So I can only gather that's going to sound better through your amplifier, which it usually always does. We've done this same comparison in some respects, but but the negatives of nitro, besides destroying the environment, I don't really see any. That's kind of what it does.
I mean, you could say the negative is, it's going to wear, but to me that's positive. I like it to look and feel broken in. I don't know that you'll hear a difference, even though I do feel like it's more resonant with nitro, but what you said about it feeling better and it's more inspiring. It's possible that anything you hear is just that you feel more inspired when you play. You know what I mean? And I think that is absolutely real, because when I got a nitro guitar, I enjoy it more. It feels better to me, even if you take the relic thing out. Now, obviously they can get sticky and gummy.
Or I rode in someone's really nice car the other day to a nice event, and it was not my car, which is not as nice. And I was like, wow, we both could get to the same place in the same way, but this car was a much more enjoyable experience than my car was.
Yes.
So I know you guys have
view it sometimes.
You guys have talked about this on the channel as well, about the psychology of the guitar. Again, on paper, could be the same guitar. One is sunburst, one of them straight black, one of them will probably make you play a little bit differently because of how you feel like you're being perceived, how it feels in your hand, all that. And I think it's something that can be easily discounted. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I like to think I'm impervious to the psychological effect of specs and guitars and all. I am absolutely not. And it totally affects how you play, which then affects the end result. It's really interesting.
So good luck with your experiment. We're curious to see the outcome and what you think.
I'll text you some of the pictures when you watch this poly come off when he's stripping it with a putty knife. It just comes off in these like huge sheets, you know.
Yeah, dude.
And the guitar refinisher that did it for me, he used to work for the Gibson Custom Shop for a pretty decent amount of time, and and he just said that really the main reason he felt that Fender went to it was just the time, because with polyurethane, you can spray it and in a day it's ready to be handled. Whereas with the nitrocellulose, I had to wait 3 or 4 weeks. Where I live in California, it's pretty dry, so we're not dealing with humidity or anything like that, and it's in the summer. And even in those conditions, it can still take 3 to 4 weeks before you can start to handle the body or do anything with it as far as buffing, sanding, etc. So I could see the attractiveness from a production standpoint where there's only a day gap between spraying and sanding, Well,
it's the same with acoustic guitars too. We look at Martin guitars, people are like, why does this D28 take so long? It's just a D20. I'm like, well, after they build it, it takes long, but the finishing is a lot different process than, let's say, Taylor guitars.
Yeah.
It's just a whole different experience. And that's part of what you pay for too.
It is. That's true.
Yeah.
That's why guitars have gotten so daggum expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Fender's funny, right? Because Leo probably would have liked poly.
Yeah.
Because he wanted things to look new. Like he hated the way the maple boards looked on TV. You know what I mean? That was a big.
He also thought rock and roll was a fad.
That's right. So
Hawaiian music's going to be the hits. Slat key Hawaiian music. That's the big.
If your goal is to look shiny and new forever, poly's great. But
there's something like I've had a bunch of. That's all I had before. Because when I was young, there was no option.
That was the option, right?
It was poly. That's all I had. And that guitar I just grabbed is poly as well. And there's a heavy weight to it. It almost feels like the wood is under a shield to me, like a force field.
Right.
I want to get it out.
So one interesting fact about this. So one of the things that we did is we weighed it before and after the finish. So fully assembled guitar. What do you think the weight difference was? I'll let you guess between the poly and the non-poly, or the poly and the nitro.
I mean, if you trick me, you'll say none, but I feel like the poly is going to be heavier
and thicker.
6 ounces.
I'm gonna guess I'm gonna be somewhere in that ballpark too.
I'm gonna guess it's more like 3 ounces.
It was
like
four and a half ounces difference.
Right between.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 4.5 ounces.
That's right.
So more than a quarter pound the guitar lost just by way of going to the nitrocellulose. Now, presumably you could do a thinner poly, like you could probably do.
Right.
My understanding is that also from this guitar finisher is that Fender typically would kind of spray them thicker than they needed to be, and then they would put it through some sort of planer to kind of remove finish because they wanted it to sort of, I don't know, be as opaque as possible, especially on the solid color finishes. But in any case, just interesting aside.
That's some serious weight.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's if you consider how much it's just that it lost 4.5 ounces. If we're considering the actual total weight of the paint, it would be much more than that for the
But that's the difference in like us selling a guitar, and not selling some a lot, because we on Reverb all day we get. How much does this guitar weigh? Excuse me.
I mean, I someone called the other day and they wanted a guitar. Don't die back.
I'm dying here.
Don't die. They literally called and said, I can't play a guitar over 7 pounds, and had me weigh a certain guitar. And it was literally like 7.03 or something.
Just take off the back plate.
Scale.
Take off the back plate.
The strings.
A screw. Oh, yeah. I don't know. That screw's been missing. It's weird.
So I actually do that. Yeah. I admit to being a pervert in this way, and I've said this before. I will take off all the pickguard screws and the backplate screws, and like on a Strat, and the jack screw, and I will weigh them all on a very precise metric scale, and I will keep if it's an 8 hole pickguard or whatever it is, I will keep the lightest ones on there. I will remove the back plate. That's how big of a perv I am.
That's weird.
I love that so much. That's so ridiculous that I love it.
And the other thing I found is that the raw vintage springs weigh about 1/4 of an ounce less than the ones that Fender provides. The Callahan bridge block is slightly lighter weight than the ones that Fender provides. So, you know, if
I replaced
do
some Strats trim springs with raw vintage ones for customers because they want that.
Yeah, so I've just done it for weight purposes. For a lot of my Strats, I end up just decking it anyway. So I'm not I'm not using the springs for the purposes of the tremolo. But in any case, you know, every little bit helps. So if I see a guitar that's 7 pounds 10 ounces, I can probably get it down to 7.7, something like that.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, it's kind of cool. It's good to know.
So these are little tricks, you know. If you got somebody who's getting, you know, a weight pervert, you know, you can always, you know, stack the deck a little bit.
Put them on the Mason method.
Yeah,
or you can just do what I do and just drill a bunch of holes in the back.
Slim fast of guitar.
Just Swiss cheese it.
Yeah, you can drill holes and weight really route it out, and then wood fill the top.
Right
there, you go.
That's like a Gibson Les Paul from 2012.
Yeah,
it's like that was a big source of why are these so light? Oh, they're not solid body at all.
Yeah. They're like duo jets. It's great. Yeah.
Well, it's
very true,
guys. I want to. Right.
No, he doesn't like duo jets.
Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't like duo jets. Not a Gretsch guy.
No, never play a duo jet. Penguins are nothing.
Gretches are from geeks, is what he's saying.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you being here today. I don't know how much this will resonate, but it certainly resonated with me hearing from an independent dealer such as yourself and getting to hear some of the ins and outs and trade secrets to identify good guitars, hearing about kind of where you think the direction of the industry is going. And I'm so appreciative not only for you being here, but for the quality and the content on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Again, we will put all of the links to the YouTube channel and tags, etc., in the show notes. I highly recommend that if you're not already subscribed, that you go over to Casino Guitars and you do that. You can head over to their website and check out their inventory, and we will link all of that stuff. And if you want to have a master built or a custom shop guitar built, I can't think of a better organization to spec that out through. So thank you, Baxter and Jonathan, for being here today. And we will see everybody next week.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.